Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. It's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters, writers, editors, journalists, all different people who are putting stuff out in the borough of the Bronx. And this way you get some insight into not only what they're writing about, but also into what they're thinking about as they put things out. This evening, we're going to, in our second segment, do a fascinating segment on an exhibit that's taking place at Hostos Community College. But right now, let's go over to City Limits and say hello to our friend Mariana Simões. Mariana, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Gary. Thanks for having me on the show.
Sure. Mariana, for folks who don't know, she's been on our program before as a climate environment reporter for City Limits. You had an article a little while back that I thought was fascinating. And, we talk about climate change and we talk about it affecting all kinds of different things. You did an article about how it might affect our public schools and New York City schools. Just give us a little background. What's there? Why schools?
Well, that's a good question, Gary. Nobody really talks about schools when we're talking about climate change, right? And really, they're facing a dual threat right now. Flooding caused by coastal storms and inland flooding caused by heavy rains, which we call flash floods, are two things that are really affecting the public school system right now.
So, are we concerned that if, God forbid, something were to happen, what do we do with the kids? I guess we would be concerned about the structures of the buildings and the health of the buildings. What's the concern there that you wrote about?
Well, my story looks at, for example, Leaders High School in South Brooklyn. They were hit really hard back in September. I don't know if you guys recall, but there was a massive flash flood that took place
I do
at,
remember, sure.
yeah, at the end of September. And so the kids there, there's a massive complex over there in Brooklyn, where the kids actually had their basement flooded of the school, and that's the area where they come in and check in every morning, and that's also where their
Oh.
cafeteria is. So it really disrupted the entire day. And instead of, saying everybody should go home, we'll use one of our snow days, for example, they didn't do that. And people had to come in, the faculty, the students. It was kind of a disaster. Everybody was wading through sewage water to get to
Which
school.
is horrible, especially for children. Was it the kind of thing that they couldn't clear up after a day or two and it really impacted on a longer term? Or is it really kind of, for want of a better term, a flash flood that it came, it cleaned out, they cleaned it up and moved on? Or was it more difficult for them to, get back into shape?
In this case, it was a quick cleanup. But I think the point of the story and what we're seeing across the
Yes.
city is that these floods are happening more and more often. And
Yes,
we
of
should be
course.
thinking about this as a reoccurring issue that the city needs to tackle. And, the same way we think about snow days, we got to start thinking about flood days.
The controller who did a study about this um, shared their map, which was rather stark. In other words, they pinpointed all the schools that are endangered, and it was there. You can get a look at it. This is pretty serious. I mean, it's not like just a few schools in each borough. This is essentially everything, right?
Right, exactly. What we're seeing is that over a quarter of the city's public school buildings, that's 28%, are currently at the risk of extreme stormwater flooding. And 41% of these are located in Brooklyn, and over 28% are in Queens.
Hmm.
The controller's office, they came up with these numbers using data from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and New York City panel on climate change as well, and New York Department of Environmental Protection. So they, took all this data together and sort of created a map of where the areas are that are most affected.
Right. What's to be done? Like, in other words, we talk about coastlines and, we talk about barriers and maybe other infrastructure things you can do to prevent, flooding in those areas. But in the schools that are in such diverse places, or are we talking about really doing something like that, barriers and other considerations around the school? Or is it just, who knows?
Well, the city has been doing things. They have built green infrastructure in schoolyards to catch the rainwater, right, before it even makes it into the sewer and overflows the sewer. And they did install 40 flood barriers in schools that were hard hit by Superstorm Sandy.
Mhm.
But the point I think that a lot of environmental advocates have been raising is that that's just not enough. There have been efforts, to create other kinds of resiliency efforts around neighborhoods surrounding schools, which is great. But we don't think about specifically targeting schools and how we can create, uh, you know, schools that are resilient to climate change. We need to
Yes.
start thinking about those
Right.
things.
Thinking about, and I guess it fall, and this will be the last point because I want to move on to something else. But it would seem to me that number one, you've got to deal with existing infrastructure. We have many schools, many older schools, but also take it into account when we construct new schools, so that at least for the future we have half a chance. The other thing, or another thing that I want to talk with you about is this new climate report that you wrote about last month. And I'll just read a new statewide report on the impacts of climate change that New York City will be impacted on all fronts. We see what the temperatures are like. We know that all the boroughs have been warmer. Let's see, the Big Apple is getting 6 to 10 degrees warmer, and it's not going in the other direction at any time soon. So, talk a little bit about the report and what does it signal for all of us, really?
The report is done by NYSERDA, so that's a statewide
Yes.
entity. So it looks at how climate change is going to affect the entire state. And basically, what it says is that we're going to see more coastal flooding, we're going to see more severe storms, rainier days, and hotter temperatures across the state. But New York City, in particular, is going to be hit on all these fronts, as you said. It will continue to be the wettest region in the state. So annual precipitation is going to increase from 4 to 11% by 2050. New York City's also going to get a lot hotter, and it is also the hottest region in the state.
Let me just ask you about that. That's
Go
a
ahead.
fascinating thing to me, considering that there are upstate areas near the Great Lakes and all different places that are actually um, colder and maybe would get melted ice a little more frequently than we would. That's a fascinating thing from, I guess, a geographic point of view. That New York City, I don't have to draw a map; everybody knows where it's located. Would be the most affected. I just think that's an interesting thing. When yes, there are other coastline areas. I mean, Long Island, and you could
Well,
certainly go upstate. And as I said, the areas that up in Oswego and all that that border on the Great Lakes.
sure, sure. But let's dig into that a little. Think about New York City. It's got a ton of buildings. And what
Oh,
really causes all that heat is that we are, an urban heat island. We're creating that
right.
all that concrete, right? Really
Very
is
good
what
point.
makes it hotter, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And a lot of people say, well, we know what happens with airplanes and what happens with cars and the pollutants, but the fact is, buildings are what cause most of climate change,
That's correct.
more than those other things. Not to say they don't exist. So, what is the result of this NYSERDA report? Do you get the sense that the state legislature is taking action at the New York Power Authority, because, of course, the generation of energy is a big thing. How did that fall? What happens with that?
Well, they said when I asked them about the goal of this report, NYSERDA said it's really to inform policymakers and folks within their own jurisdictions to take action. The state has known about these issues for a long time. We've been watching climate change get worse. And there are people doing things about it. You have climate laws that are in effect. You have the CLCPA right now, which is the state's climate law that got passed in 2019, that
Right.
is trying to sort of curtail all these, curtail climate change, stop it from advancing so fast. But the fact of the matter is, this report shows that it's accelerating, and we might not be
Yeah.
able to catch up with it. Right.
And listen, we're talking about things that we can do in New York State, but of course, these are federal and international issues. I mean,
Right.
there's no question about it. One other thing that you wrote about that I thought was interesting, and again, it's in a way how all of us can deal with climate change, is this multi-state pledge to boost the use of climate-friendly heat pumps in homes. Maybe this is a way of looking at our buildings and our homes and seeing more efficient ways of heating them.
Well, as you mentioned, Gary, buildings are the biggest contributors to climate change in New York City. So there are ways that we're trying to tackle that by changing, the way that buildings pollute, right?
Right.
And one of the ways is by switching out these putting in heat pumps, and switching out, traditional heating methods and cooling systems that run on fossil fuels. So what basically Governor Hochul did was she made a commitment to quadruple heat pump installations across New York by 2030. And she's doing that by trying to get the market to go on board with selling more of these, right? Getting the industry to make more heat pumps available on the market so they could reach that goal.
Yeah, of course. I can already hear property owners and landlords saying, okay, I'm happy to do this. Having said that, I think maybe we ought to take a look at how, whether tax breaks or some other incentives, because to just tell people, and not to say they shouldn't, but it becomes a pretty heavy lift to get. And then, of course, private homeowners are going to say, look, I'm happy to do it, but the times are tough now, especially. So we don't know yet if there's any financial support for the concept, do we?
There is tax
There
breaks,
is?
there
Okay, I'm
are all
happy to
those
hear
things,
that.
but you're right in saying that it's an expensive upfront cost,
Yes.
and so a lot of folks don't do it because it's expensive upfront. However, in the long run, it does save on utility bills, so there is an
Right.
incentive to do it, right?
Mariana, we got about a minute. What else you working on? What's coming up? Something good?
Oh, well, I'm
Name
working on a
one.
name one. Okay, I'm working on a story which hopefully will be put out this week, that looks at the New York State budget and what we should expect going forward for all of the climate laws. So you asked about climate laws and
I
what's
was going
being
to say
done.
this fits right into everything we just talked about. What a perfect summary
Exactly.
for our segment. Listen, Mariana Simões, who does climate and the environment for City Limits, thank you so much for joining us. Say hello to all our friends, and we'll see you around town.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Gary.
Great. Very informative. What we'll do is, folks, we will take a short break. And then when we come back, you're really going to enjoy this very special segment we have about an exhibit at Hostos Community College. Don't go away.
19.7% of Bronxites currently experience food insecurity. Meanwhile, instead of these nice, colorful foods, this is the best food that they have access to. If this sounds like you, there are a bunch of resources to get healthy food for free or cheap. If you want to help, you might consider donating or volunteering in one of these places. Community fridges like this one are all over the city, and allow New Yorkers to conveniently donate extra food to people who might need it. Go to this link and find your nearest one. Food banks and pop-up events like these provide millions of healthy meals to families in need. These organizations are distributing meals to Bronxites as we speak, and are always accepting donations and volunteers.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I'm thrilled because this is you could hear the title of it, but not really understand the full breadth of what is going on here. There is a exhibit on the Jewish diaspora, Jewish identity, Jewish diversity, a photographic exhibition at Hostos Community College. So let's first welcome in Sofia Oviedo, who's the Director of Research Programs at Hostos. Nice to see you, Sofia.
Nice to see you. Thank you for having
And
me.
the photographer who is featured in this extraordinary exhibit is Zion Ozeri. Nice to see you, Zion.
Thank you. Thank you for having me too.
Yeah, we're thrilled that you've brought your work to the Bronx. Sophia, just talk a little bit about, in general, about the Hostos Research Center and why this particular exhibit really fit into what you try and do.
Yes, I'm happy to share. The Hostos Research Center is a new space that's been opened here at Hostos Community College to promote faculty and staff grants development, provide opportunities through internal grants to support new research and faculty student mentorship and development of student research opportunities. And the Research Center is a place where we want to showcase new learning, invite members of the Hostos community and the outside community to learn about diverse culture, to learn about research being done by our faculty, students, and staff, and really be this welcoming community space. And so we thought it would be a good way to showcase this exhibit, which is part of a CUNY anti-hate initiative, which is seeking to increase awareness and education about the diverse identities and experiences of different groups each academic year. And this year's focus is on the Jewish community and Asian American and Pacific Islanders community.
So this fits right into all of that. What other exhibits, or is this one of the first? You said it.
This is actually the first exhibit being
exhibit?
showcased at the Hostos Research Center.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Well, congratulations to all of you about doing that. Well, thank you very much. I'm assuming, because I've seen, and we're going to show off some of Zion's photographs, that you're thrilled, because this really exemplifies everything that you talked about. So thank you so much. Zion, just a little background from you. When did you start taking pictures? And then we can talk about how you got into this particular theme that you've done so well with.
Okay, so just as a matter of fact, I was born in Israel to parents who came from Yemen. They were immigrants from Yemen, and I grew up in Israel. But as soon as I was college age, so to speak, I decided to come, and after my service in the IDF, I decided to come to study photography and art. And the best place for it, I thought, and I still think, is New York City. So I came and I went first.
An argument from me, so go ahead.
Right. So I said, okay, and why not go and see another place in the world? I was basically up until then the only country that I was was there. It was only in Israel. So I decided to come to New York and study. I first went to FIT. And I graduated from FIT. And once I graduated from FIT, I decided that I want to continue with my education. And I went to Pratt Institute. Mm-hmm. And I graduated Pratt Institute as well. And then I started freelancing and working for newspapers, doing PR for all kind of organizations and companies. And that's what I started doing. Mm-hmm. That was the start of my career.
Let me just ask you something. I'm always interested in an artist's muse and an artist's craft and how you handle it. You studied it. Some people say, well, I realize you need to study the technology of lighting and those kinds of things. What kinds of things did you get out of that, frankly, rather extensive photographic formal education that we're going to see evidence of in just a moment?
Well, FIT was more about techniques, lighting, and really geared towards fashion photography, product photography. And that was excellent because it gave me that background. But then I wanted more the artistic, not that FIT was not artistic, but I wanted really more pure artistic background. And that's why I went to Pratt Institute. And that's kind of rounded my education and also broadened my education as far as like seeing art in general, not only photography, but also painting, sculpture, and other things of that sort. So that, to me, it was really, I thought, in looking back, backwards, I think I made the best really decision to have both, going to study in both
Right.
college.
Well, judging from the work, and I used the word breadth before, and the amazing range of this work. So just by way of introduction, before we show photos, so did you just happen upon this idea of doing the Jewish identity and Jewish diversity and the Jewish diaspora, or did you like kind of take pictures and say, "Oh, wait a minute, I think I have," after the fact, I have something here? Or was this really something that you said, I better go literally around the world to do?
No, it's evolved. The first thing that
Evolved.
really kind of was the first thing that kind of like opened my mind to that possibility is actually when on one of my visit to Israel, sitting with my parents who are much older than me, and I was looking at that generation that came from Yemen, and they were very unique, different in culture, and I was thinking to myself, this generation I don't look like them, but it's not only looking like them. We don't think like them. We are more westernized, and our mindset is different. And I thought to myself, wow, now that I appreciate my immigrant parents, and I'm like, really, they will not be on the scene too long. And I said to myself, you know what? Maybe I should go and document
and really document what. So let's start looking at some of the pictures. I just think it's just so extraordinary, mostly because if you were to talk to New Yorkers about Jewish people, they would have an image in their mind. Be prepared to not have that image anymore, because we're going to see Jewish people from all over the world. So Anderson selected the pictures, so let's see what he chose.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, who is this?
This is a Holocaust survivor, actually, that fled Germany after the Holocaust and went to Argentina, Buenos Aires. And I heard that he was going around and lecturing as a volunteer in public schools in Buenos Aires, and I was very interested. When I came to his house, I was talked to him, and I realized that really I'm not taking his photograph that day because it was not as meaningful as I was hoping for. And he was telling me that he felt that he really at the end won against the Nazis, because now he has a future. They wanted to deny his future, and now that he has children and grandchildren. So I said to him, you know what, I'll come another day and photograph you with your granddaughters.
What is interesting to me is he's from Argentina. And
Yes,
again, we don't, think of the stereotype you have of Jewish people in New York. We've already begun to break it. Let's see the next.
This is another photograph that I took, and people don't know of that history, even though it's in our time and it's contemporary. This one is in 1991, when I was very privileged to be invited and to take photograph of this airtrain that the Israelis brought Ethiopian Jews from Africa, from Ethiopia. And in 36 hours, they were able to bring in clandestine operation close to 15,000 Jews from, Black Jews from Africa. So I was privileged. And this guy was actually carrying his mother, who was paralyzed from the waist down. So he's carrying off the plane. And that's, that's when I took the shot.
I suppose I could come up with comments, but all I can do is take a deep breath. It's just an incredible story, and frankly, it's in a way universal to so many cultures, especially nowadays with everything going on. Let's take a look at another.
Oh, this is a father and son. Again, I always like the contrast. Like it reminds me of the contrast between my own father. And this guy repairs bicycles and motorcycles, and that's his father. And there was a connection in spite of the gap, between the generation. The son who looked more, modern, and the father less so. And this is
and where are they? Where
Uzbekistan.
In Uzbekistan.
Uzbekistan, yeah, it's Central Asia.
Mm-hmm. In finding these people, did you like? I'm sure you did some research. Did you go around and how did you locate the people you wanted to photograph, or you just went into neighborhoods and found them?
No, I usually work ahead of time, because all these trips are costly, and I try to hire someone from within community to lay the ground and
to help you figure it out.
Exactly, and take me around, and also be a translator as well.
I want to show a couple more, and then we'll bring Sofia back into the conversation.
Okay, this is a group of foremothers that we can actually, see, and with their own children. Each one they just came from Africa, Ethiopia, and they're carrying. This is how they carry their babies. And this is in the background. You see Jerusalem. This is in Israel. They are actually in an absorption center because all immigrants, no matter where they come from, need to acclimate into the Israeli society to know how to go to the supermarket, to just to know the regular life. So this is we call them absorption centers in Israel.
Wow. And one of the things when you go to the exhibit, folks, you'll be able to go and really take your time, because we're just kind of throwing them up there, but the faces and the context in which they exist is just incredible. I think we got one more left. Do we have one more? We'll show one more. This one was fascinating to me.
Yes. Okay. So this is I decided, and I was lucky enough to travel to Yemen. Yemen. This is actually not today. Today it's almost impossible. It's too dangerous. But back then it was still dangerous. But I was able to go there, and I wanted to take a photograph of my father was a blacksmith in Yemen, and I found this guy that was still doing that work in Yemen, a Jewish guy.
It almost seems like he's in a cave of some sort, or underground.
Some sort of a cave. That's where he works, and he's repairs tools. And I just that brought me back to my own father, who was a blacksmith in Yemen, and I'm sure that's how.
We only have a minute left. Sofia, let's let you wrap it up. When you look at these pictures, this is exactly what you wanted to portray, isn't it? I mean, this is exactly what you defined at the beginning of the program.
Really, and they're beautiful because they show different facets of community, family.
I think your audio somehow messed up there. I don't know what happened. And I would just ask that question again.
Yes, so the photographs really portray everything that we would have envisioned, and even more in terms of showing Jewish community life, families, celebrations.
Wow. So just so we don't run out of time, the exhibit is at the Hostos Research Center.
The Hostos Research Center at 450 Grand Concourse, Monday through Friday, 10 to 5, Wednesdays and Thursdays until 6. So it's open
through May 2nd. So there's still plenty of time to go. Take the train to 149th Street. Get out there and treat yourself to learning about all of our cultures. That's what it's all about. Sofia, tremendous work. Thank you so much. And please let us know about every exhibit that you have. Yes. And Zion, whatever's next, let us know, because we want to know about it.
I will. And I just want to compliment Sofia and Phil and the
team,
the whole team, including the president of Hostos that had the vision. And
we're running out of time, so I do got to go. We also want to thank the CUNY Anti-Hate Initiative for everything, and the Covenant Foundation. Folks, thank you so much for joining us, and we thank Mariana from our first segment, and that will do it for the Bronx Buzz this evening. And if the curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise, we will be back next week.
Thank you.